by 6 machine gun bullets. He felt a great attitude of relief. There was no pain, and I've never felt so relaxed. I was at ease, and it was all good. So now, this is worthwhile pausing and thinking about a little bit. There are some here today who may be worrying about their life after life, from themselves personally. But there are still others who are thinking, I had a relative or friend who died, and I wonder what that person went through. Well, this attitude of peace and quiet begins to pervade this whole description. In the first place, not everybody has a near-death experience. Let's say that you're a cardiologist, and some of these people are cardiologists, and they're used to seeing people in a state of decline and eventually they die. The number of, let's say, out of 1,000 people who have a cardiac arrest, my general belief in looking at the data is that about half of them are resuscitated. What happened to the rest of them? Well, they're not in the test because they died forever and were not brought back. Well, what else happened? Well, there's another, of the 500 who were resuscitated, 20% of those, in other words, about 100 of those 500, have some story to tell. Now, of those who have some story to tell, out of those 100 that who come back and they say, boy, I don't know, this is a really strange circumstance that happened to me. People who say that, in general, in these particular reports, are overwhelmingly positive. First of all, those that were resuscitated, there is little or no difference demographically between them. Some of them are Christian and some of them are not, and some of them are agnostic. But the number of people who are brought back and resuscitated in this way, they seem to be extremely variable. Then you say, okay, how many of those got to heaven and God says, you're really a good person? I don't know. I think that a lot of them are, and there's one possible explanation. First of all, you're talking about a phenomenon which occurs when being reported primarily in Western countries, including the United States and Europe. So that would automatically create some sort of a bias. Secondly, maybe there's a difference between the way they're met by the heavenly host and by the great light which appears to them. Maybe those people were among the 500 who died early and never were resuscitated. I mean, this is such a subtle question that it would require a subtle answer, and one more subtle that I guess I'm capable of this morning. It's ineffable. Yeah, there's some. The horrible experiences in this particular book that I'm looking at account for only 2 to 3% of the people who had a near-death experience. Now, is that the total amount out there? Oh boy, I'm trying to explain that I don't know. Those people who feel that their experience was ineffable, that they could never describe it adequately, are often ridiculed. And they're left trying to explain this. And this is not helpful.
And often by pastors.
Yes. Well, yes. Let me continue with this. There's another. We don't know exactly what is meant by the noise because it's described in different ways. One person will say, well, I began to hear a buzzing sound. Someone will say, I began to hear music. Still someone else talks about hearing some sort of bells, for example. And as this happens, in the midst of this sense of feeling of peace and quiet. So it's not a bad sound. And in fact, the next thing that happens is the dark tunnel experience. And this seems to be so common and so odd, so unique, that it has become a catchphrase. I see a light at the end of the tunnel. And by the way, somebody has painted it. Hieronymus Bosch, a Dutch painter in the 1600s, drew a picture of a tunnel and the ascent to God. I think that's what it's called. So somebody has already tried to capture this on paper. Here's an example. Suddenly I was in a very dark, very deep valley. It was as though there was a pathway, almost a road, through the valley, and I was going down the path. Later, after I was well, the thought came to me, well now, I know what the Bible means by the valley of the shadow of death because I've been there. And finally, the out-of-body experience. Now, now I question whether or not this should have come before some of these others, but let's try to take this one at this point. What happens is that they are now let's say they're in an operating room, and somewhere along the line they're having a great deal of stress. They feel that they're in pain, great difficulty. And finally, in the midst of this, they feel that they are up and floating. They're out of body. They're drifting up toward the ceiling. And they're looking down onto this body of theirs, and they're thinking things like this. I guess I'm dead. Because they've also heard the doctor report that they were physically dead. Or they look down and they say, gosh, I wonder, why don't they keep on why aren't they working on my body? Or look at that body, what a mess. Let's say they were in an automobile accident. That thing is really, boy, are they upset about it? No, because they're already, at this point, for most of these people, being attended by a sense of serenity and peace and even joy while that happens. I want to read you a specific out-of-body experience. Here's one example. I could see my own body all tangled up in the car amongst all the people who had gathered round, but I had no feelings for it whatsoever. It was like it was completely different human, or maybe even just an object. I knew it was my body, but I had no feeling for it. Here's another example. When this realization comes, the fact that you are dead, it may arrive with a powerful emotional force and provoke startling thoughts. One woman remembers thinking, oh, I'm dead. How lovely. Which is why it needs to be remembered.
Yeah.
Because people are not sad to be dead.
Yeah, your feelings of peace and quiet.
They're almost, in these stories, almost always encouraged, and I am too.